Hi, everyone. We'll get started in a minute. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. We're going to get started here in a minute. Given that we had a break before our session, Roy and I are looking forward to leverage every minute of our 45-minute session and give you some time for questions at the end. Just looking for participants. Give it one more minute and we'll get started here. Okay. As some of you might be joining us, just a couple housekeeping things that you've heard in some of our other sessions. I'm not sure if you came to us, you've been with us all day, you're just joining us for this session, or you just came from Andy's session on DPD or GIS-enabled construction with CNS. I know those were both very compelling. We're going to bring you back here to talking about workforce development and where our industry is currently on this discussion, leaning a little bit more into both the contexts that are driving the discussion and what we believe is a potential solution. Before I get started, though, I want to, those that were able to join us, if you weren't, I highly recommend you look at that recording from this morning. Our keynote this morning was our Chief Product Officer. My name's Tara Blythe, and I'm our other CPO here at Infotech. I'm our Chief People Officer, and my expertise is people, culture, and workforce development, and hence the topic we're speaking with today. You're going to hear a little bit from my colleague here in an introduction slide, but I first wanted to highlight a couple things Shelley said this morning because they're a perfect intro to our session. She said, the key to proactive problem solving is identifying and addressing issues before they become problems. AI right now gives us a chance to reverse engineer our world. That was another soundbite I loved. We can leverage AI to analyze and integrate multiple data sets, creating predictive models that enhance project confidence in real time. We can also leverage AI to solve what we feel is one of the biggest challenges currently facing our industry, which is a workforce shortage. And AI, actually, digital workers become a big portion of the solution. So let's get started. Quick reminders. Now everyone should be here. You are already muted, but you are highly encouraged to use both the chat and QA features. Our engagement specialist there, Darcy, who's already talked to you, will talk to you in the chat if you have any pieces about technical issues or follow-ups. She will also be sharing some resources there. If you have any questions for me and Roy during the session, please drop them in the question and answer feature. If we can, we'll get to them during the session, and if not, we'll get to them in the question and answer portion of today. Recordings will be available after the session and will be emailed out to all participants. All right, let's get started. As I said, my name is Tara Blythe. I'm the other CPO here at Infotech, and that stands for Chief People Officer in my role. I specialize in organizational strategy and change transformation, and I've worked across industries in my career. I've also been an adjunct faculty member at both the University of Florida and the University of Georgia. My colleague today is Roy. Roy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Tara. I'm Roy Sturgill. I'm an assistant professor at Iowa State University in the Department of Civil, Construction, and Environmental Engineering. One of the unique pieces of my background is I was also an engineer with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, or the DOT, in Kentucky. And so really playing off of my practitioner roles that I've had in the past related to construction and design in DOTs, and then using that experience in the classroom, I've developed expertise around different areas of construction, one of which has been workforce and assigning inspection practices in construction. And so I'm looking forward to our discussion today to talk about one of the most important pieces of our industry, and that is people, or lack thereof in some cases. Back to you, Tara.
Or lack thereof. I love that. So to set the context today, we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about the context, what we mean by this, and why we chose the title we do for this session. And this is not the first time Roy and I have spoken together. We first did a presentation on this in iHeap last year. I've also been asked to speak a couple times now on workforce development across our industry. And where I'm really trying to get us to go is, yes, we need to understand the problem, but we also need to understand that the solution to the problem is in our hands, and that we can embrace some of the things coming at us to get us there. What do I mean by that? We're going to talk about how we cultivate the workforce of tomorrow by really examining some of the future skills needed, what are driving those future skills, and how we get those upskilling done within our industry. So let's jump into that. First, and yes, this is not a conversation about AI, but I cannot have this conversation without AI right now. And we're looking at what is driving some of what is we're focused on here in the 21st century. We're living in the forefront of the digital revolution. The integration of digital technologies like AI, like automation, like data analytics into everyday life and industry. These are tools that are allowing us to run faster, to do less, and produce more. That is the winning solution to what we need to really solve what's in front of us. And so what I've done here, and yes, I did this for the recording within itself, is after Roy and I had already presented on this a couple times, I asked AI how it would approach a session like this, why they think there's such a gap in our industry specifically, and where they would recommend leaning in to solve the issue. They aggregated a lot of conversations out there, and it was nice to see that our presentation was pretty aligned. And I promise I didn't go back and change any of it after it gave me a solution. But there are different pieces there that can really show you where we're going. Again, I'm just exploring this to kind of get us started and to show you what kind of tools are out there to help us as we advance. This is one of my favorite quotes that sets context, and I've been using it for a long time. I've been speaking in workforce development, organizational development across industries for 20 years, since I worked on my PhD back at the University of Georgia. Um, and this one came out about 6 years ago, and it has absolutely proven to be true. At the time, I didn't know that Maurice Conti, when he said this, was sitting at Autodesk. So if I have any Autodesk colleagues here today, you might remember Maurice. He's a futurist, and that is my future job title that I hope to have. From what I understand, a futurist is someone who says something that proves to be true. And this is absolutely proving to be true. Organizations need to evolve and respond quickly to the technology advances that are coming at us. In the last 100 years alone, if we put that in perspective, how much we've changed versus how much we can change, there is no choice but to keep up. Shelley used a quote to start her keynote this morning, and it basically said, if you're not the steamroller, you're going to become part of the road. Digital transformation is the steamroller right now. And we have every opportunity to run alongside it, utilize it, and allow it to propel us forward. But we will be left behind if we don't embrace it. And our industry in particular needs to focus on this. In 1994, only 6% of people had access to the internet. By 2007, the smartphone revolution began. Social media didn't become the major force it is in our world until the last 10 years. How quickly things are moving are very important for us to understand and to embrace. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a couple key pieces. When I was at iHeap, I met a gentleman named Joey. Joey, I'm not sure if you're in eMerge today, but it's nice to see you again. I met you in the hallway, and you struck me in a conversation very quickly because you reset the expectations of the conversation about technology. And it was clear that what you're saying, and we were talking to a bunch of technology providers, Infotech, Autodesk, Bentley, Esri, we're all introducing technology that helps to advance the industry in which we are moving. But the technology itself isn't the innovation. Innovation connects that technology to people to make business transformation. In the next 20 years, we'll bring more change than the past 200, as Maurice said. That AI, that automation, that rapid innovation is our only path forward. And where we need to look, where we need to come from, is figuring out that it's not someone else's problem. The reason I reached out to Roy individually is I've been asked, as I said, to talk on workforce development now for about 3 years within our industry. And what I found quickly is that a lot of us want to point fingers in other directions other than ourselves for the answers. Universities aren't building the right pipelines. We're not teaching people the right things. They're not ready when they come out of school. We need to get to people younger. We need to go all the way back to elementary school. I'm not saying that any of those conversations aren't worth talking about. They are. But if we spent too much time working on curriculum from the past in accredited universities that work very slowly in moving those pieces, we're going to actually miss the skills needed in the future. And Roy will speak to this a little bit more with more depth later, but I wanted to make sure I make that comment. Our goal is to shift mindsets, to shift cultures, to embrace the idea of where we are today, and to understand that the solution is right in front of us. This is the S&P 500. Arguably one of the best arguments, right, for what makes a successful organization in today's world. There's others, but it's one of the best ones out there. If you can succeed on the S&P 500 in a sustainable fashion for multiple years, your organization is succeeding. Let's put this in perspective. In 1958, the average lifespan on the S&P 500 was around 61 years for an organization. A strong organization with the right foundation, the right tools, moving in the right direction could pretty much have a similar business model with only small evolution for 61 years and still be successful. By 1970, this dropped to 35 years. Today, it's averaging 15 years. 15 years today to stay successful and sustainable. And most of those companies are saying that the way they're staying sustainable is they look to completely transform their business every 2 to 3 years, with evolution and reinventing themselves at a 6-month tick. Our industry has never been asked to move that fast to embrace that type of change. Additionally, we're seeing in the technology industry, those specifically serving construction, new competitors are emerging every 3 months. Just compared to a decade ago, this was around every 12 months that you would see a new competitor come into an industry. So we have different competition than we've ever had. So why do we call this the war for productivity? And in my industry, it defined, I do serve the civil and infrastructure construction industry. So very much we are all in the same industry, but my expertise is in people. My expertise is in organizational development. And in the people world, we're always in the war for something. You've seen all the headlines. It's the great resignation. It's the great talent shortage. There's always something, some war for something happening. And right now, that definition is appropriate. The war is for productivity. And the definition of that you can see pretty easily is that for the most part, we're winning. But we need to figure out which organizations and which industries really set themselves apart. So what do I mean we're winning? If we look at the gross domestic product over the last 50 years, it has gone up almost 600 times, a 600-time multiplier in what we are producing in the United States alone based on what we were producing 50 years ago. That is incredible. In that same time period, our workforce across the United States has only gone up about 10% as a total workforce. That is a pretty shocking statistic. That absolutely means that we are producing more with the same amount of people. And what has allowed us to do that is the advent and the transformation of technology, the embrace. And there's been other revolutions in our history, right? This is not the first one, the Industrial Revolution, the Manufacturing Revolution, but the digital transformation, digital revolution is unique. It's unique because it comes at a time when we need it most to accomplish where we're coming from. But it also scares us more than any revolution that we've had in the past. Now, I'm going to say that, but most of us didn't sit back there when some of those other revolutions happened, and that scared them too. And mindsets had to shift. Some of the top trends across all industries right now in the workforce area are this war for productivity. It's this embracing of a hybrid work environment. And again, the answer to that is often the digital tools that we provide in meeting people where they are and allowing them to work in those areas. I often answer the question when I get put on podcasts nowadays of how do we get mindsets to shift? How do we get people to embrace these new tools? And I said, it's one of the worst things that happened to this world, but it's one of the best things to get mindsets to shift. It was the pandemic. We were forced to use the technology and the tools that allowed us still to connect to accomplish our goals. And we proved we can do it. Hybrid work environments work. They're where we need to continue to go. It's a new definition of a blended workforce. So that's full-time and part-time, expanding into gig workers and contract workers, people being hired for very unique skills. It's a skills race, and it's really getting clear on what are the skills of tomorrow. I can do an entire session on that, so I'm going to summarize them quickly for the purpose of this session. It's cognition, it's resilience, and it's agility. The most important for the purpose of this session being the definition of agility. That's not a new skill set. The number, like in the top 3 skills for the last 50 years by Fortune 500 CEOs of any talent across industry, across expertise, of a soft skill, if you will, or a core skill that we're looking for in people has been critical thinking. It's always up there. It's the number one thing you're looking across, regardless of industry you sit in. The definition of today, though, is agility, which is critical thinking at pace. We no longer have the time to go into a room with a bunch of smart people and sit and debate and answer. We need to make the best decision we can in terms of what's in front of us and move forward. And we're giving ourselves the tools in generative AI to get there. Our workforce is also changing, right? And that's being driven by a generation more than anything else. We have 5 generations, AI and digital workers, working side by side in our workforce right now. That is a unique perspective. But our youngest generations take up the biggest piece of our workforce. Millennials and Z will be 70% of our workforce by 2030. They are digital natives. They learn at a different pace. They possess the 3 skills that I just said are most important, and they will drive us forward. But they are lacking some of the knowledge and expertise that we need to partner together. That puts us in a positive solution when working together. Additionally, by 2030, we're going to see that 30% of the workforce will be gig-based. The description of that is it's not a negative population where we're saying, oh, Gen Z, they don't want to commit, they're not loyal. That's not true at all. They are very loyal. They're loyal for impact to move things forward, but they see their skill sets as an opportunity for impact in return, and they're willing to move in to help accomplish a goal. Workforce and employers need to embrace those opportunities and involve our jobs to see it. Here's the biggest thing, though, I'm going to pause on, okay? This is not the AI talk. We've talked about that a couple times today, but I do want to embrace that AI becomes our solution. And what we're challenged with AI, where people are scared, is for the first time in our history, or at least immediately, AI is coming at something that makes us as human beings feel unique. For many of us, it's something we went to school for. It's something that makes us special, right? We're a professional engineer, we're a PE, I have a PhD, I have a degree in this that says I am uniquely special. What AI does, artificial intelligence, is helps augment intelligence. It helps aggregate, and help you make decisions in quicker ways. Technology of the past helped automate manual tasks. This one helps automate things you do with your brain. Yes, that's going to lead to fear. And yes, that means changing mindsets. But we need to shift away from this fear of becoming obsolete and understanding what that does is it actually moves us forward. This is a real fact. AI will create 3 times the number of jobs that it replaces. It is replacing jobs, but jobs are always replaced. And these are moving in the right direction. It's creating new opportunities alongside of how we build these pieces. Roy?
Thanks, Tara. So just to kind of go back to a couple of points. One is, in civil and in infrastructure construction, we're seeing, over the last handful of decades, just as Tara mentioned, increases in productivity of upwards to 300%. And in that same period of time, we're actually seeing decreases in productivity in construction of, in some cases, up to 30%. So that's presenting the challenge in our industry. In construction, we're presented with this challenge, and it comes from the fact that we work in unique scenarios, with every project being different. We're working with a lot of different skill sets, generations, and a pretty broad workforce. So how do we move forward? The way that we can move forward is by embracing some of these concepts that are here today in digital delivery, and using tools like virtual reality and using other technologies that are out there and being implemented. We have an opportunity to implement things such as digital delivery, where we also need to work together to use these open standards so that our silos that we typically used to operate in can communicate digitally from one to the next. So where we used to use tools that were using file formats and logging data that wasn't usable downstream, we need to start working together to really build this digital revolution in our industry and keep data workflows digital and live and updated constantly. The other thing that we need to do is we need to skill up our workforce and help them to embrace these technologies through education and training, and that's going to look differently in the future than it looks today. I work at a university, and I'm the first to say that sometimes there's more that we could do to help prepare our students, but we do work within some confines that that I'll mention in a moment that just make our changes be a little bit slow. On top of that, we need to be focused on how we can invest and upgrade our systems, upgrade the use of our technology with funding to become a more sustainable and resilient in this digital world that now exists before us. And so all those things are happening now. Just as Tara mentioned, we've got 5 generations working out there. We have different tools. We're working around robots. If you haven't seen, like the robotic surveying dog doing LiDAR and that sort of stuff. These things are out there. We have companies that are using machine learning and going out and hitting different databases of social media, using satellite imagery, stitching all this data together. Data sets that are often referred to as big data, where an individual human can't process all that information, but we have the power of computers to be able to bring all that data together and distill it down into things that are meaningful. A good example of that is a company that does such a thing and projects where underground utilities are through using AI. There's also the use of AI by other companies that are helping to go out and grab weather data and work zone data and help populate a construction inspector's daily work report with that information. So it's not a matter of getting ready for tomorrow, because tomorrow's here. So there's things that we have to start embracing now, so that lack of productivity increase, we're able to realize that for the success of our industry.
Right. So I'm going to reinforce a couple of those points. I talked about hybrid work environments before, and one of the things I hear with workforce, and Roy's going to hit a couple of the positions that we see are the biggest gaps right now in our industry, contractors, consultants, DOT employees here on this call. We understand construction inspectors, people in the field, but what automation allows is we're seeing now robots that can be controlled from not only miles away, but states away, that can still do some of that work, and where through the embracing of technology, and it's moving fast. If it's not there yet, it will be there, and at an exponential pace. That equates to organizational change, to new job creation, to shifting away from this fear of being obsolete, to embracing the workflows and the automation that this new technology allows us to find. And what it's asking of you, what it's asking of us, is to, again, not point in another direction and make this someone else's issue, but to look at our workforce challenges as an opportunity, a problem where we can reverse engineer and find the solution to it right in front of us, from the embracing of technology and the evolving of these roles. And that's every role, right? So every role right now, we have an opportunity with the advent of generative AI, where we're being asked to be less problem solvers and more problem finders. The best nowadays is to step back and make sure we're asking the right question, using the right tool, embedding the right piece, pulling in the right insight to be able to accomplish the goal. We're now making sure we're stepping back to asking the question right in the first place. On the first day of iHeap, when Roy and I were there, the panel there this year I thought was really amazing. They had a fun question of, if you could have any superpower, what would you have? And the one they all agreed on was the ability to multiply themselves, because there's just too much of an ask right now, and there's too much of a shortage. And my answer to that is, we do have that. And that's the technology that we're handing each of these people right now. The funding piece is also worth talking about as we work through the retooling, the pace of change, the changing workforce landscape. One of my colleagues, Terry Klein, you might have seen his session earlier today, sent me a snapshot of an FDOT meeting that just, I think this week, where the secretary, I'm not sure if he's on this, but did a call out and said that workforce development is one of the #1 things they're looking at in our state, in the state Infotech sits in Florida, and that there's a 38% growth rate in transportation construction anticipated this year alone, almost 600 jobs in road transportation in Florida alone. And that one of his biggest budget items that he's working through is the creation of a transportation academy that would help upskill individuals to be ready for these jobs. We're all talking about this. And our goal here is to come together to help solve that solution. Like Shelley said this morning, this is a space where we don't need to compete. We can solve it together and we can build what we need. Roy?
So, one of the things that as we're adopting these technologies, uh, there are gaps that are being formed in the skills that we need to, use the technologies efficiently in the field. As we move to building information modeling, um, and have these digital data flows and life cycles, we're creating the need for a person, one of our, human human resources to have those skills to use that technology efficiently in their job. The same thing is happening with construction workflows, the digital tools that we see out in the field. Um, and also, I think that there's going to be a need in the future to really look at our accreditation at different universities for engineering and licensure pathways to work in some of those skill sets. That's one of the challenges that we currently have is the ability to change in my environment at the university is a slow process because what we have to do is prepare a student for their examinations and for licensure, and there's certain confines that we have to work within to teach certain skill sets. In some cases, those aren't always technology based. We actually teach the background of what certain softwares do still because you have to take the test on those skills rather than just being able to use the software. And those things are important, but we teach on paper plan sets or at least PDFs of paper plan sets, and we're not really getting into 3D using 3D models all that much. It's very small pieces and parts. So as we're moving forward, we need folks with these multidisciplinary skill sets that need to be, BIM modelers and be able to manage technology. And, in the future, as we have more need for construction inspectors and land surveyors, they're going to also have to have a very diverse set of skills to use technology effectively in their job. Somebody who is a construction inspector is also going to have to be cognizant of how to manipulate models, put data into GIS systems. It's going to be a much different role than what it was historically. So one way that we can get to that is through the use of micro-credentials. And a lot of fellow universities, like Iowa State University, are building programs around developing these micro-credentials where someone can come back to take one class, or maybe there's even multiple micro-credentials in one class or multiple classes. And so we're building these flexible learning environments, sometimes partnering with different organizations or other institutions even, or maybe even industry partners to build out these different skill sets, these different training programs so that someone who needs to be able to do GIS could do a couple of courses related to GIS and have a badge or a token. And those badges or tokens, those micro-credentials, are also going to be the way that people identify what skill sets they have in the future. And oh, by the way, this is already happening in Europe, where if you want a job, your LinkedIn profile better have all those micro-credentials you've done, because that's how people are hiring now.
Got it. All right. So we're giving you a heads up on what we think the solution is, right? We got to get education and upskilling into our workforce faster, but that doesn't need to be upskilling and education on the jobs of the past. It's got to be on jobs of the future. And those jobs of the future, we do understand what they're becoming, and we need to be able to move as fast with them. And that is going to be partnerships with our technology partners, with our professional associations, with people that understand our industry, the depth of the core of where it's going, and where it needs to be in the future. So I'm going to ask you to reset for me for a minute. And yes, Tara's going to ask you to do an activity, and I can't see that you're doing it or not, but hopefully you'll find this fun. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen near you, hopefully that's not too antiquated, try to find one, grab it real quick. And I'm going to ask you to do an activity with me. Grab a piece of paper and a pen. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm not going to ask you to turn it in. You see here 3 2x4 Lego blocks put together. I know I got a lot of engineers in the room, so I'm sure you got Legos near you too at some point. Though this is two angles of those three Lego blocks put together. So I'm going to hold up this in front of me. I don't expect you. It's going to be hard with my background here. It's two angles. If I turned it once and then I turned it again, I want you in your mind, if I turn it one more time, to draw what that last angle might look like. I'm going to give you a minute to do this. Some of you have already started. This minute is going to be a hard pause for people. Try to draw the third angle. And yes, I know there's four angles or five. Some people like to draw it from the top because that's how their brain works. That works too. Okay. For those of you that did for some reason have access to Legos, I know there's a lot of us with kids at home. They might be able to just grab it. Feel free to try to build it. But here's where I'm going to make this point. This activity is a fun one, by the way. You can use it in your organization. So almost everybody has access to Legos. And the point here is that it is proven. It's actually better for engineers, so it might have been better in this group. But it's proven that 90% of the adult population in the United States, on average, time after time when we do this activity, 90% cannot draw the third angle correctly in under 3 minutes. They can't do it. They can't see it. However, 90% of the population can build it if given the blocks to do so in that same time frame. The reason I am making that point is right now what I believe is our biggest gap in solving this workforce development issue that we're talking about in our industry is our inability to jump in together and actually start building the solution together. And that to me is ironic because we're a bunch of builders, right? But for us, this doesn't feel like a problem we should have to solve. Somebody else is an expert on people and organizations and workforce, and it's somebody else's issue. But we are the expert on this industry. We are expert on the skills that need to be there and how we can evolve together. Innovation is when we transform that abstract concepts, we come out of our heads and we actually start trying and experimenting together. Roy and I believe, and many others out there, that the answer to that is micro-credentials right now, is upskilling quickly, moving in, building those credentials together. Right now, Infotech is working, and we're not alone. We're talking to Bentley. I'm working with Oklahoma DOT. Thank you if you're on this call. You've been an incredible opportunity, pilot, to give me insight on where you're coming from and where you want to go. We're looking at partnering with the University of Florida. We're looking at talking to people like Roy and professors that are out there to build digital construction, micro-credentials that really focus on these skills of tomorrow, that give the skills we need to solve and allow more access, both for career changers, for pipeline, and for professional development sitting in seats. They allow for all of those things. And if we build those things, we are changing and shifting. One of my premises out here, and I'm not saying all the time, but this industry in particular has tried to create a lot of experts. The analogy you're seeing in front of you is this individual expert position. There's always going to be a place for PEs. It is that incredible and it's that valuable. But getting that tightrope walker, that specific unicorn of unique skills that's capable of being able to walk across that cavern in only one purposeful way using those skills is a lot harder than embracing the tools we have today to build a bridge to get many more people over that cavern and solve our issue. And that's what we should be trying to do. And the biggest way to change that is to move the people that are in our way. This is one of my favorite quotes because it really talks about what stands in the way of an organization. And it's not the incompetent. It's the people who have already accomplished something that think that's the only way to continue to accomplish it. What got us here in our industry is not going to get us there. And we need to change our agile mindsets to be able to embrace this. In technology, agile methodology is an incredible piece. It's that continuous improvement. But you can't embrace agile until you actually change the mindset that brings us forward. And that means creating the cultures that support those pieces. There's key elements to those cultures. And that moves into this idea of building and collaborating together. Right?
So building from that, I think one of the grand challenges that we have moving forward is being able to attract and recruit and train and educate and build a sense of belonging for the workforce of tomorrow. I work in an industry, an agency where we're trying to produce a product. Our product is the students. Hopefully, you all that are listening to us today are appreciative of that product. But I also know that there's a lot that we can do to speak to, the current generation that today, grew up around video games, which I did too. They just look a lot different than they did when I was growing up. But they're excited about technology. They want to use technology in their jobs. And so that's one end of the spectrum, while we're also dealing with folks who, aren't used to using those technologies and maybe have a little bit of fear, hesitation about using those technologies. So we have to create a industry and an area, a place for all those folks, and have those folks also work together. And this is a problem. This is a challenge that's faced by industry, but it's also a challenge faced by the universities, and we have a role to play in solving this problem as well. And so as we're working toward these solutions to help support folks across different skill sets and different needs, one of the things that we're focused on is trying to provide those opportunities for different types of upskilling and retooling, whether it's the micro-credentialing that we've talked about, but ways of being flexible, ways of being virtual. A lot of programs, a lot of universities have online, asynchronous or synchronous master's degree programs or other graduate certificate programs. We have those here, and those are intended to support our own students that are graduating tomorrow, but also for students of previous generations that want to come back, that want to build some skill sets and that sort of thing. And those are the type of opportunities that we, both as a university and other folks and companies in the industry, need to work toward to provide those opportunities, because people do want a sense of belonging. They want to know what they need to do. They want to be able to use technologies, and we need to help foster that type of opportunity for them, because at the end of the day, they want to provide value to the company and they want to provide value to the industry. It's more than just a paycheck.
All right, so I'm going to sum us up here and then give hopefully about 5 minutes still for questions. Ultimately, we're talking about making this our solution that we can solve together. And that does mean cultivating a culture and cultivating organizations and changing mindsets to embrace the technology and the tools that are given that will help us solve those spaces, and shifting to the positions of tomorrow to solve the workforce issues of today. And that means hiring for what we need, not what we used to need. And that is a shift given the tools that are coming alongside. That is delivering that value, that is realizing that value in that shift. That is a modern shift in leadership focus and leadership profile. And we know by embracing that commitment, we see huge gains. Companies that truly embrace that what is now 5 generations, digital workers moving together, that diversity of thought that comes out there through those perspectives really impacts where we're going. Other industries have been showing it for a while, and we can get construction there. So my last comment to you is I've worked really hard over the last 8 years working for Infotech to become fluent in the language of your domain. I'm going to ask you to become a little more fluent in the language of mine, right? So you say interoperability. That's intentional collaboration in my world. You say open data standards. I say embrace communication and training. You say digital delivery. I say embrace agile execution. You say BIM. I say unified knowledge sharing, cloud-based solutions, remote workforce enablement, digital twins, predictive problem solving, automation, future-ready skill development, modular construction, adaptable workforce planning, model as a legal document, compliance through digital assurance, asset lifecycle, project ownership and continuous learning, and of course, digital as-built, execution, and documentation. We have all the tools we need to solve this issue. We have an opportunity to do it together. that takes transformation, cultivating our workforce, and changing our mindset. Questions? I'm going to see real quick, Roy. I don't see any that were put in through the session. Does anybody want to drop any in now? I do see a couple in the chat that Darcy has already answered. You will have access to this recording after the session. Yes, I do know we touched on some of the things that were questions for Shelley this morning, and we built on that, and hopefully that helped. Any other questions in the Q&A feature right now? Or in the chat if we need to? Oops, sorry. All right. If there's no questions, we'll hang on and see. And we'll say thank you. And maybe you'll have time for a little break before our next session. You can connect with both me and Roy outside. We have shared our LinkedIns. And next up, you have a choice between digital transformation and understanding FHWA's advancing BIM for infrastructure roadmaps. Hope to see you there.